So our next presentation now is Iseult Sheehy, and Iseult is Head of Operations with Business for Biodiversity.
Thanks. So I'm delighted to be here presenting at this point in the day because I think what I'm about to present is going to speak to a lot of what has been brought up through the morning. My name is Iseult Sheehy. I'm Head of Operations for Business for Biodiversity Ireland, and I'm going to talk to you about what creating a nature-positive economy for Ireland can look like in the context of where we are today. We're talking about agriculture. Quickly about the platform. So we are a not-for-profit social enterprise. We were an objective of the last National Biodiversity Action Plan, the third one, and we have 3 years of seed funding from the Department of Agriculture and MPWS. So joint funded. We've been supported by Natural Capital Ireland, Business in the Community, and the National Biodiversity Data Centre in that time to set ourselves up. So we're into year 2.5 now, and things are moving along very quickly. Our mission is to empower every business to incorporate nature into decision making. And so the outcome of that is to create this idea of this nature positive economy for Ireland. Nature positive is a term that we're starting to hear a lot, but not necessarily, it's not necessarily a new idea. So what is nature positive? Well, when we're talking about nature positive, we're thinking about transforming the way that our societies, our economies, and our political world works so that all of our actions contribute to the well-being of nature and build our natural capital. And in doing so, nature is then providing for us an environment in which we can flourish as human beings and also all other species as well. So that's broadly what nature positive is. And in the business context, we're looking for businesses to be taking actions and undertaking activities that reduce their negative impacts across their value chains. So that's the first piece. And then also redirect financial investments toward activities that restore and protect nature. So when we're thinking about nature positive in the business context, in the room today, we're thinking about farms, but we're, as you know, has been pointed out, we're also thinking about all of the other businesses that are within the agricultural sector. So at the moment this is our system. So we have nature, we're exploiting nature, taking our natural capital and transforming that into financial capital by bringing it through our primary, secondary industries into our tertiary industries, where we're stockpiling it as profits. And we don't, at the moment, have mechanisms in place to turn that financial capital back into natural capital. At the moment, we're just taking from nature without giving back. So in the context of businesses we're kind of acclimatized to the idea of net zero. We've been thinking about carbon and climate change for a little while. And we've been reporting on our work around climate change. But net zero and nature positive are related to each other. So we know the 5 main drivers of biodiversity loss, climate change is one. So we know that we can't create a nature-positive economy without getting to net zero. But the other piece is that we now understand as well that healthy biodiverse ecosystems create the regulating ecosystem services that do all of the work for us in terms of mitigating against climate change. So we have our carbon sequestration, our air and water purification, among many, many more. So now we understand that we can't get to net zero without nature positive. So this is a cycle. We can't. A lot of businesses have been saying we're going to solve the climate thing first. We're going to get up to spec on our climate stuff, and then we'll move to nature. But actually, we need to be doing both in tandem. So nature positive is one of the global goals, in the same way that we have the Paris Climate Accord, and the goal there is to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. We have the Global Biodiversity Framework and the global goal for nature, which is nature positive by 2030. So we're looking at becoming net positive by 2030 with full biodiversity recovery by 2050. Within the Global Biodiversity Framework, and Jane mentioned that this has been updated relatively recently, but we have a number of targets that are directly for businesses, but obviously business, it exists within our societies and within nature, so business is going to be indirectly affected by all of the targets. But specifically here we have that businesses are to assess and disclose impacts and dependencies on nature and reduce negative impacts. And then the other is to reform environmentally or biodiversity harmful subsidies. So to look at Target 18 first, so this is something that we know has been happening all over the world. It's a product of our system, which has been a capitalist system for a long time now, and we've been promoting those capital ideals, trying to promote profits. So and not paying any attention to nature. So a lot of our subsidies reflect that. We have them here in Ireland. They're in every country in the world. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But Target 15, reporting on nature. So we have the CSRD, which came in early last year, so the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Europe has created this directive to ensure that businesses across Europe begin to report and disclose on nature. So initially, it's mandatory for larger organizations to start reporting in 2025. So they are collecting data this year for that report in 2025. And at the moment, it's about 2% of Irish businesses that have to do mandatory reporting. But we know that in Ireland, SMEs make up the biggest share of our organizations. We have between 95 and 98% of our businesses. And so they aren't necessarily obligated to report under CSRD, but they are part of the upstream and downstream supply chains of larger organizations that are. So they are going to be asked to provide sustainability reports and to account for nature in those reports. So it's good practice for small organizations to start doing this work now, but it's very hard because of the issue of capacity. So what does it look like to be moving toward accounting for nature for your business? So this is the framework that has been developed globally. You need to start with assessing. So your business needs to know what their impacts and dependencies are on nature to understand the risks and the opportunities that are there, and develop a meaningful biodiversity strategy. You need to commit, so develop a biodiversity strategy with clear, science-based, measurable, robust objectives, and then transform. So this piece that we're talking about, around work for nature, not really fitting into the systems that we have, the economic systems, the political systems that we have. This is what we're asking of our businesses in every sector, is to look at how your business model needs to evolve in this moment in 2024. And then the last part, of course, is to disclose and report so that all of this work is transparent. So with the platforms that we're set up in order to help organizations to do this. We've been working with a multi-sector community of practice for the last year to develop a roadmap. So it's hard. Our community of practice members range from very large organizations like Post and ESB to smaller organizations like SAP Landscapes. We've been working with them to figure out what it looks like to start this process. And it looks different for every business. It looks different for each sector. And the size of your business, obviously, is a big factor as well. And there's a lot of information out there, and the information is changing a lot. But it will come to settle. It's changing because it's new. And And we have a lot of frameworks. There's a lot that's there that we need to understand, but it's hard to get to grips with it if you don't have somebody guiding you through it. So that is the work of our platform. So I'm just going to kind of go through these very quickly, but we're looking at goal A1 at the moment with a lot of our members. So we're looking at expanding your knowledge. We have a lot of resources for that. We want to be able to get our organizations from no idea what biodiversity is, all the way through to being able to develop that biodiversity strategy that is robust and science-based. Making a commitment, you need to have buy-in from the decision makers in your organization to be able to do all of this. Allocating resources, and so there's a lot of difficulty in this space because it's not something we've ever made space for before, nature. So we haven't got the resources. A lot of the time what we see is biodiversity champions in organizations that are volunteer roles. But as we go through the reporting and disclosure road, we start to see how important it is to have people who are dedicated to this role. And not necessarily in small organizations, because obviously the workload will be smaller, but in very large organizations, we might need a whole nature team. A strategic nature role is the first recommendation that we would make. Put somebody in charge and give them resources so that they can learn what they need to learn within your organization, or to engage with other sorts of educations to be able to bring their knowledge up to spec. And then make sure that they're supported by the rest of your organization. Goal A2 is unpacking your business, understanding your business relationships, sector level context. So know what's going on in your business, know where your emissions are, your waste, your disturbance, your pollution, materials. You have to be able to understand what's going on in your supply chain, and what you're doing that's impacting the 5 drivers of biodiversity loss. Understand your relationships, so know who you're working with, know who is supplying to you and who you're supplying to. And then also this piece about finance and investments. This is really low-hanging fruit for a lot of organizations. Pensions, insurance, where is your money located, and is it contributing to a nature-positive world, or is it not? And then the sectoral context. So what's happening in your sector? How are other organizations tackling these issues? What are the challenges that are specific to your sector? And what are your responsibilities as an organization? For the larger organizations, we say, it's those are the organizations that have the power to take on the responsibility of moving the whole sector towards a nature-positive one, to contribute to that idea of a nature-positive economy for the country. So this is where we are now with our assess roadmap. We have our first 3 goals are available, and then the 4 goals that are remaining for the assess roadmap will be released this year. And then final piece of the puzzle for us, so we have our membership. Our membership is really about each organization evolving their business. But we also have a partnership program, which is about moving your sector toward becoming a nature-positive sector. So we, as I mentioned, had our multi-sector community of practice last year. We're working with them on what it looks like to be more transparent about trying things in the nature space. In Ireland, we have this culture of being very afraid to try, and we've actually had feedback from a lot of organizations where they're being coached not to make anything public in case it comes back on them. But of course, we need to start looking at what a transparent approach looks like, so that other organizations can learn. It's very collaborative, and when we move in now to looking at sector-specific COPs, so we're going to be launching our energy community of practice this summer, and then our next community of practice that we have lined up is aquaculture. We're also looking to work with those organizations within those COPs to bring in other members of society, stakeholders, so looking at the policy landscape, looking at the regulatory landscape, and seeing what we need to push for, how can we advocate to move things more quickly along toward this nature-positive Ireland. And then we're looking at creating best practice for Ireland in that space. But I think one of the most important things for me to mention is that Ireland is its very own specific context, and everybody in this room knows that. So this is something that we have frameworks, we have global standards, we have European standards, but in Ireland we have our own specific cultural context, and it's incredibly important that we have buy-in from everybody in each sector in order to make these changes. There's a lot of wrongs that we have to right, I would say, in terms of policy, and particularly in the farming space. If you have a business, or you work in a business, or you know of somebody who is running a business who is working within sustainability, we're doing a skills review at the moment, and we would love as many organizations as possible to fill out this just short survey to find out what the gaps are. So when I'm saying we need all of these things in nature, if your response to that is, I don't know, who in my organization can provide this, then we want to be able to start building the educational tools so that these people become available sooner rather than later. And this will certainly be interdisciplinary roles and very helpful for all businesses. So that's for me. Thank you so much.